Welcome to Doing Small Better with Layne Allen Fields. I'm your host, Layne Allen Fields, and I help leaders of faith-based organizations and faith-based small businesses with revenues of $2 million or less improve their ethics, improve their effectiveness, and ultimately improve their earnings through coaching and consulting. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Doing Small Better. I'm Layne, and my job is to help you get it together while you're small, so that if you're the one who's sitting on that multi-million dollar idea, that multi-million dollar business, we need to go ahead and get this thing right now while you're small, so that when it's time to grow, you'll ease right on into it. Now, there'll probably still be some growing pains, but you get my point. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about today was probably one of my most challenging areas of being in business. And that was getting my prices right. Getting my prices right. Hindsight being 2020, I realized that a lot of my challenges is because I was underpricing myself, which really meant that I was undervaluing myself. And that's a mistake that I made for far too long, that I want you to not make that mistake. If you have, I don't want you to make it again, starting now. And if you're just getting started, I don't want you to start out wrong by undervaluing your services, underpricing your products, whatever it is, however you engage with the marketplace. And looking back on it, I kind of believe that my small town sensitivities might have stayed with me throughout my adult life and my business life. Now, don't get it wrong. I'm not cheap. I'll pay for something that if I believe the value is there, I'll pay for it if I had the money. Take clothing, for example. I don't do well at Marshalls and Ross and TJ Maxx. Although, if you look up from time to time, you will find your boy in K&G, because I kind of like K&G. But big, low price discounters where everything is just thrown out there and put together on the rack, and you have to go through it and look for bargains and look for your size. That's not what I do. I'd much rather prefer a smaller men's boutique, a place where they've got things organized in a manner that appeals to me, a place where the price point is a little higher, but there's a salesperson there that I can ask questions, that knows a little bit about the fabrics, knows a little bit about the shoes, just more service. And I'm willing to pay more in a smaller environment for bigger service. So it's a smaller environment, but for me as a consumer, it has a much bigger impact on my ability to find what I'm looking for, because I really don't like to shop. I want to see something, let it speak to me, find out what it costs. If it's in my price point, pay for it. If it's not, go back, save up a little more money, come back and try again. That's my preference. But if I really had my way, if money wasn't an option, I would go fully bespoke, fully custom tailored. And when you go to a custom tailor, you're going to go to one guy or one lady, some fabric, a tape measure, and some needle and thread. And their prices are much higher than Ross and TJ Maxx, because the lower you go down in price, the higher you have to go up in volume. And there also may be a compromise in quality. But when you go to a fully bespoke tailor, you want excellent service, you want excellent fabrics, you want excellent craftsmanship, you want a great looking garment that's custom and tailor-made for your body, your weight, your measurements, your girth, whatever. And when you wear it, it should be obvious that this was custom made, fully bespoke tailoring. And they have the highest prices. Do you get my point? My point is, just because you're small doesn't mean that you have to be the cheapest. Your price has to be built on the value that you provide. And nobody should have a better idea of the value you provide than you. But the first thing we have to get past is we have to get past the mindset that making money and making a lot of money is a bad thing. You do realize that being profitable is actually a biblical concept. It's not sinful. It's not unrighteous to have a profit. For Proverbs 14 and 23 says, in labor, there is profit. And this is coming from, the wisest man in the world. Proverbs 14 and 23, in labor, there is profit. He also said in Proverbs 13 and 11 that he who gathers by labor will increase. He who gathers by labor will increase. So profit, increase, based upon labor, based upon service provided, based upon workmanship and craftsmanship. These things are actually biblical concepts. So if you struggle with raising your prices or having a high price, the first thing you have to get over is the fact that it's not a sin. However, there is a warning. In Proverbs 11 and 1, he says that a dishonest scale is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. What does he mean? He means that price gouging, overcharging, having these ridiculously astronomical prices for no other reason than you can charge them because you can, because there's a sucker born every day who will pay sucker prices. You may be a smooth talking, fast talking, wheeling and dealing grifter who will overprice, overvalue, and sell it to the most undiscerning person who's willing to pay for it. If that's where your heart is, then believe it or not, that's not even a business issue. That's a spiritual issue. That's an ethical issue. That's something that's in your heart that you really have to examine. Where am I? Am I looking for ill-gotten and dishonest gains, or do I really want to put the best product, the best service out in the marketplace, charge a fair price for it, even if it is on the higher end of the spectrum, because a just scale is his delight. So yeah, God's all right with you making money. God's all right with you making a lot of money if there's value in what you do that justifies you charging what you charge. Now, I think my biggest problem when I first started was trying to figure out how to set my pricing, how to set my scale. And there are probably 3, 4, maybe 5 ways to set your scale, set your pricing. One is obviously trial and error. You have a product, you have a service, whatever it is, you put a number on it, throw it out there, present it to the market, and either they buy it or they don't. And you can go through that trial and error process and get to a place where you massage your prices to the point where, for whatever it is that the service and product that you provide, that you've got it to a place that's a sweet spot. Right price for the client, right price for you to make some good money. And you can do that by trial and error. Another way to figure out your pricing is market value. What are your competitors charging? What's fair market value for the service or the product that you provide? And in my case, as a contractor, this was all over the place, because if a homeowner got quotes from 3 different people, these quotes could be night and day different in pricing. So the question is how much is something worth? Ultimately, it's worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. Now, that might sound like a little bit of a contradiction from what I said earlier, but we're talking about just gains. We're talking about a just scale. We're talking about being in business with high business ethics and intentions. So let's just keep that as our context. So the one thing that I learned pretty early on is that the lower you are on the pricing spectrum, the more competition there will be, which means you have to compete more on price. It's like the Ross, it's like the TJ Maxx, it's like the Marshalls, it's like the Burlington Coat Factory. The more there is, the lower the price points are, the more volume you have to do in order to make some money. Now, that didn't work out so well for me. When I started out doing the work with my own two hands, then yes, I could do that a little bit more fluidly. But when it got to the point where I became exclusively the contractor and I was bringing on other laborers to do the work, then that became much more of a challenge because I was competing with the guy who was doing it with his own two hands. So those are a couple of ways that you can figure out your pricing, kind of the way I did it. But there's a better way. A better way is to calculate the cost and then add your percentage to it. But even that can be a little bit tricky because if you don't have an accurate scope, in other words, what exactly it is you're doing, and a duration, how long it's going to take you to do it, and the labor cost, how much you're going to have to pay people to get it done. Because if you calculate paying somebody X amount of dollars for 3 days worth of work, and it takes you 6 days, then you've just doubled your labor cost. All these little things factor in. The accurate duration, an accurate idea of what the scope of work is going to be, and all of the details. Because there may be some details in the work that cost you more than you calculated. Because the one thing that I learned over the course of time is that my profitability went out the window time and time again because I didn't get the details accurate enough. And I'm a fairly detail-oriented person in some ways. But if details get by you, those details can cost you a whole lot more than you anticipated. But going back to the calculate the cost and add your percentage. So for me, I find that pricing method works best for me because it gives me a little bit more control over both my profit and my profit margin. Now, my profit was the dollar amount that I made after taking out all the expenses, counting all the cost, and receiving my final invoice payment. Whatever that dollar volume was, that's my profit. So if a job cost $10,000 and I made 3,300, then that 3,300 was my profit. But then there's something called profit margin, and you have to know the difference between the two. So the profit is the dollar volume, but the profit margin is the percentage. So if it was a $10,000 job and I cleared $3,300, then that means my profit margin was 33%. Now, calculating the cost, because it's more than just labor and material. You also have to put a number on your time. How much time, how much energy, how much effort is going to go into fulfilling this contract? What if you're like me? For years, I drove V8 pickup trucks. Every time I turned around, I was at the gas station. I drove a ton of miles where people might drive, 25,000 miles a year here in Metro Atlanta. Man, please. I was driving 45, 60, 65,000 miles a year just taking care of my business, going back and forth to different clients, different projects, going back and forth to suppliers, picking up guys, dropping off guys, all kinds of things. Well, guess what? All of that is overhead. All of that is expenses. All of those costs come right from your bottom line. I couldn't figure out where my money was going. Well, heck, my money was going to the gas station because every time I turned around 2, 3, 4 times a week, I was having to fill up my truck. But I wasn't initially calculating that as cost related to the project. And time, overhead, paper clips, ink pens, how many phone calls go back and forth. You have to put a dollar volume on all of these things, because if you don't, you're undervaluing yourself. I could go on, but I believe my point is made. Point number 1, it's not sinful or ungodly to make money and earn profits. It's actually a biblical principle. Point number 2, don't undervalue yourself by having prices that are too low. If you're not losing a percentage of business because the market says your price is too high, then your price is absolutely too low if every time you give a price, somebody buys what you're offering. Keep that in mind. And point number 3, figure out the formula that works best for you in determining what your price points are going to be. And once you figure out what your price points are going to be, then you need to stand 10 toes down on why you charge what you charge and how you differentiate yourself from the competitors who may be charging less. Because you want to get to a point where you're not competing on price, but you're competing on the value that you bring, the value that you offer, your competence, your good name, doing things the right way, and making sure you give somebody what they paid for and a little bit more. So that's how you do small better. Small doesn't mean that you have to be the cheapest.